Hi, everybody. I'm cracking myself up a bit because I'm watching our special guest today headbang to our theme song. Thank you. Yes, Doctor. You can't see him, but Dr. Nick is throwing horns and everything. We'll get to Dr. Nick in a moment. I know he's the star of the show that you've all come to see. But welcome to our Tuesday stream of Q&A. AMA. So it's, ask us anything, and it's going to include Dr. Nick in just a moment. But first, as always, let's thank everybody who's donating to my new Patreon at any of our super fun levels. They start at just $1 American per month, which I know is affordable for some people and not for other people. But if it's in your budget, won't you please consider supporting the content universe of Delta CX and customer experience, customer centricity. I thank everybody who has joined. I think we have over 100 Patreon members now, with half of them paid. So you can also join for free. And you will get news before anyone else gets it. Let's see, what else was I going to tell you? Oh, yeah, I was going to apologize for my fake eyelashes. Don't let them throw you off too much. It was our Italian wedding. I know I look like some sort of 60s cat eye, actress, but don't let them throw you off too much. They were glued on for my weekend wedding, and you know the way this goes. They will fall off slowly over the next month, and so that that's just, it is what it is. So if you are watching live and would like your question answered, you can send it through the link at deltacx.com/links. If you are a mid-level or higher Patreon, you can ask your questions in our Discord, where we have a special channel called Q for AMA, where you will get priority service. So let's switch over to our resident headbanger and PhD, Dr. Nick. Dr. Nick, if people don't know who you are, who the heck are you?
You guys know me. I don't need to introduce myself. I make enough noise on the social networks on LinkedIn. I'm Dr. Nick, advocate of user-centric design and behavioral interaction designer stroke psychologist. That should probably cover me for now.
All right, that's fine. Let me move the comments so they don't cover you up too much. We'll put them over here. Okay, so Dr. Nick, everybody, if you, like me, are a fan, then you want to follow him on LinkedIn. Check him out, Dr. Nick Fine. We got a bunch of questions ahead of time today, and I can tell some of them are follow-up questions for each other. So we are just going to jump right in. The first one is a bit of a long question. Nick, get out pen and paper. Get ready for action. This question says, all right, let's wait for Dr. Nick to have his equipment. No, yes.
Go for it.
All right. In a usability test, the main goal is to test a new mobile line purchase. It has 6 steps where the user chooses a plan, chooses a mobile number, scans their ID, takes a selfie, enters their address, and chooses the delivery date and time. Each step has several details and follow-up questions. Should I do a separate task for each step, or let the user go with the whole journey uninterrupted? If I do a separate task and follow-up questions for each step, I will interrupt the flow and distract the user. But if I let the user do the whole journey uninterrupted, it'll be long, and I might miss the chance to ask follow-up questions. What are your thoughts?
Good one. Question asker. Great question. Love this one. Also, because I've done lots of work in this space in terms of, actually, I've worked for internet service providers. I've worked for telcos, you know what I mean, Virgin Media, BT, those sorts of people. So I've done this kind of a journey lots. And I've done lots of step journeys. And step journeys, if you're doing anything kind of e-commerce or sign up or onboard, step journeys are kind of a cornerstone, right? You're gonna encounter these things at some point in your life, because, as you well know, a step journey is leading somebody on a particularly defined journey. Now, reading in between lots of lines here, what we're really talking about is, you're talking about interruption and stuff, and basically putting load on the user, right? Now, you're making a bunch of assumptions in there that I want to just unpick, because what you really are aiming for is flexibility, because you can't put your users into categories of this is okay and this isn't okay. Some it will be okay and some it won't be okay. Sometimes there's going to be an external interruption. The dog barks or the doorbell goes. Stuff happens, right? So you want to support both. You want to support task interruption, the ability to save, the ability to live save, not have to actively save, all of that good stuff, because that does a massively good job of being able to handle all of this stuff so that you don't have to design specifically to interruption or no interruption, right? I think you have to assume interruption, especially in a post-pandemic world of working at home where doorbells and dogs bark and stuff and babies cry and, stuff that happens that doesn't happen in the office. Another thing I would suggest when Debbie was reading that out, it says it has 6 steps where the user chooses a plan, chooses a mobile number, scans the ID, takes selfie stuff, right? There's stuff going on there. But those aren't what I would consider discrete phases or steps of this process, right? One of them is about choosing the plan. That's a distinct decision point. Choosing a mobile number, again, same again. But scanning the ID, taking a selfie, entering the address and delivery date and time, those are 2 separate, I think, maybe 3, 2 separate tasks. One is identifying who you are and making sure that, we're validating you as an individual and taking the relevant proofs, evidences, and then the fulfillment part, which is choosing a date and time that you're going to be in to receive the kit or what have you. So again, this is kind of like the IA of steps. You can probably chunk those into more meaningful chunks that represent the phase of the post-sale or the sales journey post-checkout, right? So you're setting expectations and allowing people to save. So that's kind of my answer, is get those categories a bit better and then design to interruption so that people can then be doing stuff, go, shit, I've got to go into a meeting now, save, continue later, come back, right back where they were. Ideally, you just have it all done automatically so they close the window or computer crashes and nothing is lost, all is good, they come back, they carry on straight away. That's me in a relative nutshell.
I like it, and I want to add to it because we don't necessarily know the mechanism. For example, here in Italy, I got one of my mobile lines at a kiosk. And so it wasn't exactly the type of thing I could save later or walk away from because it was a kiosk in a shopping mall. So we don't know where they are. But I think that my answer to this question, in addition to the good advice that Nick gave, would be that I think you can technically do both types of usability tests. As Nick said, you can look at some of the chunks of the tests or the tasks that you can have people do, and you can test those in smaller usability tests or whatever. But I would definitely not want to go to market with this thing without having done an end-to-end test, where if this is the type of thing that people do in one go, as Nick mentioned, and it's not going to be save it and come back to it later after you feed the kids, if this is the kind of thing that people will do in one go, end to end, like because they're at a kiosk or because they tend to be at their phone or computer or whatever, then I would definitely want to see that task tested end to end at once. And you say, it will be long and I won't be able to ask follow-up questions. That tells me you're not booking enough time. If you need a certain amount of time to make it through the task, book more than that time so you can watch people do the task and then ask them questions. Not every usability test has to be 10 minutes or 20 minutes. You could book people for an hour if you expect that this is something that takes a half hour. But here's the thing, don't warm them up for it. Don't say, make sure you bring your ID and blah, blah, blah. We want to see them F it up. We want to see them go, oh crap, you're asking me for my passport. I don't have my passport. Or things like that. We want to see the reality of it. So don't over prep them for the usability test. Let them show up naturally with what they think they should have on them and see if people just happen to have on them the right things. Or maybe they say, oh, hold on, I'm just going to walk away from my computer a moment. I have to go get my ID. Okay, good to know. So I would say I would like to see the whole thing tested end to end if it's typically done end to end, but that you can test pieces of it as you are designing and iterating, if the pieces can be logically grouped as Nick talked about. And hi to the people joining, like Alessandra.
By the way,
go ahead, Nick.
I kind of, this is actually more about the methodology of testing these various phases. I gave a slightly long-winded answer to something slightly different, but yeah, like what Debbie is saying, you have to test this stuff individually and then put it all together. Some of the more critical stuff, like taking a selfie, which is going to require an API to some kind of validation system or whatever, it's going to require quite a lot more going through, and those routines and the things that people perceive, there's a lot more iteration to go on in there. So yeah, test piecemeal and whole meal, if you know what I mean. Test individually. I blipped then, sorry. Test individually and then test the whole thing.
Yeah, and I would also remind people that there are times when testing a realistic prototype, like with Acture, can be great. But once it's take a selfie, I would want to see that be real code. Because
Yeah.
I know that in Acture we can pretend you've taken a selfie, but that's a step a lot of people mess up. And I don't want to gloss over it by saying, okay, in Figma, we've pretended you took a selfie, great, move to the next step. The selfie part can really trip you up. I've been tripped up by that before, where they go, we don't like your lighting, your face isn't in the
Yep.
circle, your face doesn't seem to match, whatever. So this might be one of these things where you use a prototype to test as many of these pieces as you can, and then when you want to test it more end to end, you might be using either some prototype, some dev build, or you just might want to test the dev build when it's still on a staging server and not going live yet. Do not let this be a live experiment.
We had exactly this. I can tell you now, vaguely, for the passport office, where I was redesigning the passport here in the UK, the passport renewal service. Effectively, people have to submit a passport photograph that must be of a certain quality that the machines can read. And as Debbie is saying, there are tons of things that go on that is way beyond the interaction design at this point. So as Debbie's saying, you do the interaction design bit in Azure or in forked code or whatever that is, and then you may test just the selfie bit, because there's a lot of technical bits to get right, and then you kind of bring them together. It's like you're building up to this, them both going together. You have to test the techie thing and the kind of the UI containery bit, and then put them together and see if they get them to work, and then iterate from there. It's the only way to do it. It's the way that we did it. It works well. You will find weirdnesses with that API. I won't go into details now. It's much like AI when it came around. It made racist and offensive and terrible things. A lot of these APIs, unless you're a white male of a certain age and you're not wearing anything or glasses or beard or religious artifacts, it can go horribly wrong. So, and you need, as a researcher, you need to find that all and find it all and report it back as well. So you'll be much more stuck on that kind of selfie stage in the technical interaction with it.
Testing with diverse audiences. That's the key.
100%.
All right, let's put up the next question. Thank you so much, Nick. Next question says, some people say to get into UX, you should stand out. What does this even mean? Or is it even a thing? Darren Hood mentions on LinkedIn, there's no way to stand out. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Yeah, I don't think I agree either. Nick, you want to start?
Sure. I mean, I know some absolute rock stars who are unheard of in the social spheres. Okay, they don't stand out, and they deliberately have avoided social media. Some of the most creative directors, some of the most creative people, they're nowhere near social media, because it's the uncoolest, most corporate, most yucky thing in the world that makes everybody feel bad about themselves. So if you're a creative person and you're super sensitive and maybe neurodiverse or divergent, why would you want to expose your beautiful, creative heart, brain, soul to that toxic wasteland of misinformation that we call social media? So standing out does not mean anything in this world. It just means you've got a big, what we used to call EP, a big ego, a big online opinion, right? I'm going to name names. There's a person called Natalie Moser who isn't a big deal on LinkedIn, and I did a podcast with her and Nick Grantham and Tom Scott recently. I worked for her at Eurostar as a contractor. She's amazing. It's the greatest interview I ever had. She gets it. She's on the same page that myself, Debbie, Darren, other people are. But she's low profile. She's just out there doing great work, currently at Tesco's, doing the work, mentoring her teams, doing the really good UX, and Tesco is benefiting. So you do not need to stand out. There's this bullshit idea that you have to be somebody on social media to be somebody and stand out and be successful. Maybe there are elements of truth to that, and I'm just an old dinosaur. Who knows? You asked me my view. That's my view.
Yeah, I'm going to take some of the worst different angle.
Can I just say one last thing?
Yeah.
One last thing. The people that stand out often stand out for the wrong reasons. And unless you're like taking that Donald Trump kind of controversial approach to PR, I don't see that's good. Having a shitty reputation, everyone knows you're notorious. So what? I mean, there's some kids out there with 50,000 followers on LinkedIn who preach absolute shit. Big freaking deal. You know, they can sleep at night, but they're not doing good work. Sorry, Debbie, over to you.
No, totally fine. I like what you've said, but I actually kind of perceive the question differently. So I think that you took the question to mean like, should I be standing out on social media maybe? I'm thinking more about like standing out. So your answer is good for that. I'm going to answer it for the whole idea of to get into UX, you should stand out from maybe the perspective of your resume or your portfolio, because I agree that I don't think the people who have the louder social media presence or who post a lot on LinkedIn are the people who necessarily get a job. Oh, we've got another subscriber. I've got it blocked, I think. Thank you. Oh, same. Oh, you're subscribing to both channels. Thank you. Yeah. Oh, hi, Thomas. Good to see you. And hi, Anne. Also you. So for social media, I would agree. You do not have to be a social media star. You do not have to develop a, say it with me, personal brand. You know, these are things that we keep hearing, and I think they are mostly meaningless. However, let me take just a different angle in case the question means this in a different way. If the question is, hey, so many people are applying for the same job, how do I stand out? And is standing out even a thing? So if that's the question, and it might not be, hi Carly Grace, we'll put Carly Grace's question on the end. Hold on. We already have a bunch of questions, but we'll get you eventually, Carly Grace. So if the question is standing out during applying for a job, I would probably say yes, there absolutely are ways to stand out, and most of them are looking like you know what you're doing. I've been saying that for years, and I'm going to keep saying it again. I don't think you stand out in a job application because your resume is purple, or because your portfolio has animations, or things that will make dyslexic people sad. I don't think that that's how you stand out, at least not in, hi Malika, at least not in a good way. I think that you stand out from job applications by looking like the person who can do the job. If you are applying for jobs that are way, way above where you are in your career, if you just got out of a boot camp and you are applying to senior jobs looking for 4, 5 or more years, there's no way for you to stand out. And you're not going to stand out because you're probably not qualified. And so it's not like if only your resume were more sparkly or more purple or had a couple of more keywords on it, you would get this job. You might be tremendously underqualified for a job when there's still a flood of candidates, and companies can take their pick of exactly what they're looking for. So to me, good evening everybody, to me the best way to stand out is to have the great resume and great portfolio that show that you know what you're doing at the level at which you are, and then you are applying for jobs that you are well qualified for. Because sometimes what stands out to me in a bad way are the severely underqualified people who are applying for jobs, you know, that are way too far away. And they say, well, why not apply? And I say, because now there are 1,000 applicants and Nick's application won't be seen because there's so much garbage applications in there. So I do suggest that people only apply to something they might have some shot of getting, which I know is an unpopular opinion. Nick.
Yeah. I'll tell you a couple of things, and I did misinterpret or take it from a different angle.
You might have it right, and I might have it wrong.
No. Okay, so I would say a couple of things here. The notes I've written down. Number one, just don't use templates. Think for yourself, design for yourself, present yourself in your own way. I think you can stand out a mile just by not looking like everybody else, right? Second of all, and I've written down here, not standing out, i.e. fitting in. Sometimes you don't want to stand out, right? They're looking for somebody of a certain profile. They don't want a firebrand like me or somebody with their, they want somebody fairly standard that's going to fit into the chemistry of the team and just, be a solid worker rowing in the same direction as the rest of the team. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. The standing out is exactly as Debbie said. This is a safe pair of hands, or this is an open mind, or this is a beautiful mind that we can develop, or whatever these things are. I think it comes down to your personal brand as to how you sell yourself in that regard. Like, I'm a rough diamond. Please help me become a polished, highly valuable person. Or I'm the finished article. Let me fit into your team and deliver on your objectives. Or everything in between, that kind of stuff. That's me.
I dig it. Okay. Thanks to the person who asked that. We have two questions that appear to be two separate questions, but are follow-ups of each other. So I'm going to put them up at the same time, but I'll only read one at a time. So the first question is, what metrics would you recommend early stage startups focus on to gauge product market fit and early traction with customers? When's the right time to shift focus to other metrics like conversion and churn? And then we'll read the follow-up question later. Nick, do you want to jump on that one at all? I don't know if that's your thing.
It's not an easy one to ask, and it's kind of outside of what I would consider my wheelhouse. So I'm going to give you just a really quick kind of bullshitty top of my head answer, because I work with a bunch of product people and coaches doing SLT training stuff, and this is screaming leading and lagging metrics to me. But again, Debbie, you tell me if this is more your thing than mine. I don't know. Do you know what? I'm going to keep stum on this rather than make up and construct garbage. This ain't me. Over to you, Debbie.
Yeah, and this is unfortunately very much kind of it depends. Like, I can't say, oh, everybody must measure this one metric and that's how we know that we have product market fit. You know, how do you know that you have product market fit? So I can't just say always look at this particular metric. It just doesn't work that way. So what metric? So first of all, I also think that early traction is sometimes garbage, so you have to be careful at that. Very often a lot of startups are doing all kinds of weird things to get people to sign up or join or download, and then startups measure that as early traction, and then they say to a potential investor, well, look, you know, we have 5,000 downloads this week or whatever it is. And it's vanity metrics, because just because somebody is early traction doesn't mean they're happy or they're staying or this has product market fit. So be careful of measuring early traction or some of that stuff, because even though people think they have to report that to a potential investor, I think at this point everybody knows it's a vanity metric, because you could hire a zillion people in country X to sign up to your service and say, look, I have all of this early adoption. It's fake. It would be sort of a lie or a deception. So I'm not a big fan of the early traction thing. It's an input metric on the way to something more important. How do you gauge product market fit? To me, product market fit is a never-ending vision. No one says, we've got product market fit, we're done. We're never going to make this thing any better. It's great the way it is. We're done. The end. You know, we can't tell what Nick's doing at all. It's so mysterious back there. I like that. But the smoky notepad. He's got a smoky notepad. So don't look at the man behind the curtain. So again, how do you measure product market fit? How do you measure that you've built the right thing for customers? Well, those might have to be something later in your process, like high customer satisfaction rates and high loyalty. People are not just early traction or adoption. They love this. They're happy to pay for it. They're staying or they're coming back or whatever it might be. So I can't say for sure that's the right way to measure any particular thing, but these are some things you might look for to show that you have product market fit. Are we making people happy? Do we have signs that we solved a real problem for them? And do we see signs or metrics that they're staying with us, especially when they have other choices? When's the right time to shift focus to other metrics like conversion and churn? I don't know why you're shifting. When aren't you looking at conversion? When isn't conversion important to a company? Or when isn't, whether it's conversion from free to paid or trial to paid, or whether it's conversion to they made it through the checkout and they bought a thing. When are we not caring about that? Because obviously when we watch conversion and we're watching all of that funnel or all of the steps, we can see moments when we lose people. And that's an opportunity to do more research and or get in there and make improvements so that we're not losing people, especially if many are being lost at the same place. So when wouldn't you measure conversion? When wouldn't you measure churn, which is essentially disloyalty, people who don't come back, cancel, downgrade, don't stay? I would want to be measuring those. I don't want those to be, I don't want us to just pretend everything's great now because we saw some good early traction. Those are vanity metrics. Let's see, we've got another question coming in. We'll put yours at the end of the list.
Can I answer the second part of that question?
Yeah, let me
that's
just
an
read
easy
it out
answer.
loud because we do have some people who listen to this show without looking. The second part of the question, oh, do you mean the next question or the one I just answered about shifting focus?
What are effective strategies?
Okay, let me read that
second
quickly.
part.
Second part of the question is, what are effective strategies for soliciting customer feedback at low points, like after churn, account downgrades, or poor NPS scores? How do you uncover root causes? Nick, go ahead.
See, I love this because that I think is an easy answer. Is you involve users and you observe them and you talk to them and you just involve them. The idea that you're looking at these metrics of churn and downgrades and NPS scores, these quantified measures, and then going, wait, the horse has bolted. I need to find out why it went so wrong. Is completely after the fact. It's too late. You involve people at whatever stage this is, and you find out what is it, what need am I not meeting, what pain point am I causing for these things to happen.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
These things happen because you're not meeting a core need, or you set an expectation wrongly, something along those lines, or they couldn't find it because of the navigation or God knows what, right? There's lots of good reasons why this stuff goes on. Asking people after the fact is never going to turn out well. So just involve people and you'll find these things out really quickly.
Yeah, I agree with Nick. I think if there's ongoing qualitative research of customers and non-customers to always look at the task and the experience and the why, then your company should be a lot less surprised as to people canceling or downgrading or churn or things like that, or giving you low NPS. Go ahead, Nick.
Yeah. Look, I may have said this before because it's definitely a Nick Fine cliche, but I end up saying this almost at every gig. The whole role of a user researcher is to find out exactly what Debbie has just said about finding out the what is going on, or why is this thing happening. That's what we are born to do. That's one of our raison d'etre in this world, is to find out why. That's what makes a researcher a researcher. So the whole balance, it used to be the web analyst. Now we're probably talking about the web analyst stroke product manager. You know what I'm saying? There's somebody looking at a dashboard, somewhere with a bunch of quantitative stuff. And the analogy that I use is they're looking at a radar or a sonar of their world. And they can see these blips are happening. And they might be peaks or troughs or drop-offs or whatever they are. And they'll say, oh, I can see something is happening. But they don't know what. So if you're looking at your sonar, I can see there's a blip. I don't know if it's a canoe or a destroyer, right? So you send out a researcher, like a paratrooper, a commando, you parachute them in to look at the thing directly, to go, yeah, it's a warship, run, or something. And that's the role of the user researcher, to find out what the hell is going on. So you can look at all the metrics, you can have all these quants, you can have until the cows come home. But if you don't balance it with somebody actually looking at the thing, you're doing another Nick Fine cliche is you're flying on instruments only. It's like you're flying an airplane on autopilot and only looking at the dashboard, never looking out the window, which is crazy. You have to look out the window.
Look out the window, everybody. Yeah, so ultimately, I have to say from a personal note, and I'm not the user, but nothing makes me as grumpy. Well, few things. I can be grumpier. Few things make me as grumpy as canceling with a company and then getting an NPS survey. And usually I get the NPS, and then there's a little box like, what could we have improved? Like, we noticed you canceled. What could we have improved? And I almost always write, I don't believe you care. Like, why should I give you an answer here? I don't believe you care. You didn't seem to notice when I was having problems. Your customer support people sucked. You didn't notice this. You didn't care about that. But now that I've left, you want to know what happened? I don't believe you care. So, like Nick said, we have to continually be researching qualitative. It can't just be surveys, it can't just be A B tests. Continual qualitative research to make sure we understand what are people's realities. What are they experiencing? Not what do we want to report internally and what looks good on a slide. We have to these are the root causes. We know the root causes. Very often, many of the companies I've worked at knew the root causes and just didn't care because they figured we're good enough. Customers will figure it out. If we lose some customers, we'll find some other customers. We had excuses. When I finally told people why people hated us or left or whatever, people were like, oh, yeah, that's true. Yeah, that does happen here. But, that's okay. We still have a good app rating, or we're a Fortune 200 and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, Mike says they should have asked what we can do to improve while you're active with them. Yeah, I think there's a lot more people can do before there's churn. But again, very often companies don't care until shit's on fire. And then someone goes, I wonder why shit is on fire. And I'm always saying, why did we wait for things to be on fire for us to care that there was a fire? All right, let's move on. Our show is already half over. We got lots of questions to get to. This one came in, and this is an interesting one. It says, I just discovered a job listing for a design role at my company with a salary range that exceeds my current compensation by at least $18,000. I find this concerning. What advice would you offer? Also, the job description lists things I've already accomplished at a higher capacity.
It just screams lowball, doesn't it? I don't know how to answer this one. This is more of an HRE kind of career advice one. I'll put myself in your shoes. If I'm working and I see somebody's advertising my job and I've already achieved those things and they're paying nearly 20 grand more, I'm probably going to ask for a sit down with my boss, with my line manager, and say, hey, what's going on here? I'm also probably going to get my CV shined up and maybe start to look around. But this is not the market to do that, I suppose. I should not say that as flippantly as I just did. It's a tough one. I don't have an answer for you on that one. I'm sorry. The corporate bad behavior doesn't cease to amaze me. Sorry.
Yeah. My advice there is definitely to hold on. I'm trying to get the next question queued up. This definitely sounds like a talk with manager and or HR. If they are looking to hire a job like yours and they're paying more, I've definitely seen this before. And what happens is, this is what happens when someone in a company says, okay, it's time to put a new job out there. And then someone says, you know what? We need to pay a little bit more to get better people or to pay market rate or whatever. But the problem is they haven't been giving you raises that raise you up to market rate. You got 1% a year. You got 4% a year. You didn't get raises along with the rise of market salaries. And now they're trying to put out something for a market salary. And so I would definitely be talking, depending upon my relationship with the manager, either go to that person and or go to HR and just say, Tom says, don't talk to HR. They never help. I always hope they will, but it depends. If you have a good relationship with your manager, I would start with them. It really depends on where the relationships are. If you have a good relationship with your manager, I'd go to them and say, I've just seen this job advertised. I've already accomplished many of these things at a higher capacity, but I've noticed that this is paying $18,000 more than I'm making now. Can we please find out what it would take for us to get the budget to raise my salary up to this level, if not higher? And if that person says, oh, I'm never going to get the approval for that, or that's not going to happen, or whatever, or they say, oh, I'll look into it, and then magically nothing happens for weeks, you have your answer. So we're getting a lot of questions in. Give me a second to try to get all these in. I think Rachel's will have to be last. I think I'm going to have to say no more questions today.
Yeah. And what Tom is saying in jest is so spot on, because HR is definitely on the corporate side. They're on the business's side.
Yeah.
Let's never forget that. They might appear to be soft and cuddly, but they haven't got your best interests at heart unless it's a legal requirement, frankly.
Yeah. I get it. So we had a follow-up question from Tom from something that we put earlier, and Tom said execs hate qualitative because it's anecdotal. How do you challenge that? Qualitative isn't anecdotal. I think you have to. Whoever told them it's anecdotal needs to help execs understand that research is research. Nick, what are you waving at?
No, I was just slapping them around the face a few times.
Yeah, I mean, qualitative isn't anecdotal, so someone needs to do a better job presenting research insights to make sure people understand the methodologies and approaches which are not anecdotal. Anecdotal is a product manager calling up a customer and going, "What would you like?" And the person makes up a bunch of stuff, and the product manager goes, "Okay, we're building that." Like that to me has no research rigor, no research process. That's anecdotal. If we're going to call anything anecdotal. So I think that someone would have to do a better job presenting research to help people understand that if you believe in surveys, if you believe in focus groups, if you believe in calling up a customer and asking them stuff, then the qualitative research is even better than that. And this is research. Like I think that tying the two together can help. Hey, we're getting really low NPS scores. So I spoke to 20 customers that left us in the last 3 months, and I learned why they're leaving us. I also triangulated this with customer support complaints and sales telling me why people are downgrading or leaving. Here's my report on internal and external knowledge, evidence, and data on why we sometimes have trouble keeping customers and get low satisfaction scores. If someone can't absorb that because it doesn't have enough numbers on it, then that's the company where you are. And if you can fix that, great. And if you can't fix that, you're moving on. Okay, so we've got next question here. No more questions. We've just got too many. What do you think is the best way to be able to see who is worth following and reading articles from? I have seen some people who say that they've been in UX for 10 plus years, but they say things that are just honestly laughable and concerning about UX. I definitely have some answers there. Nick, you start.
Yeah. Look, there's so much to this. Anybody can say anything. So there's that, okay? Then I can claim to be a professor of astrophysics and no one's probably going to validate that and just take my flat earth predictions as read, which is, again, one of the big problems that we have in our world. Number two, we haven't been doing proper user-centric UX for at least 5 years. At least 5 years, which means so that people have been in this game they say they've been in this game for anything less than 5 years. They've never seen good UX. They don't know what good looks like. And so the advice they're dispensing is on a very narrow, wrong horizon. And there's an awful lot of that going on. But the younger generations are so excellent at marketing themselves, marketing ideas. Just they're great on the social media, and they're great at gathering audiences. They're not good at digging in and getting the experience and climbing the hill and doing the whole Mount Stupid thing and then getting over it and getting past it. That's completely foreign to them. So they'll shortcut all that and Google stuff, and you end up with hive mind wrongness produced beautifully to masses who don't know any different. And that's how you get these false idols that are everywhere. What do I think is the best way to be able to see who is worth following from reading articles from? There is no good way around this, unfortunately, because there are some very compelling, it's a bit like AI, very compelling hallucinators out there right now who are just putting out compelling bullshit. It's how we got to this place in the first point. It's how we lost UX. It's how user centricity died, because everything became about Figma and doing high fidelity stuff. I would say you should be able to hear in people's messaging. You can hear in Debbie or Darren or my own or Sean McSharry or Joel Barr or anybody, Thomas Wilson. You can hear people's user-centric belief in the things that they talk about. They might not be talking about it directly, but it bleeds out. You can't help but see what camp they're in. Also, taking the inverse of that, and I'm not naming names because there's some very nice people doing wrong things. There are people who will want to do down, be very defensive and very aggressive against people like me, Debbie, Darren, and other people because they're defending wrong. That's a big tell. That's a massive big tell, big indicator. So just listen out for the signal and then latch onto those people and be wary of those people slamming us, because was that me? Did I do that?
That's pretty good. I think
Sorry.
the camera did that.
Yeah. Wow. No, that's somebody else.
No. I can't do that. Oh my God.
Okay, we have gesture recognition turned on and I didn't even know about it. Cool. All right, nice. Some bonuses there. Let's try that one. Okay, we're running out of time. I just stopped dicking around. That's my answer, basically. Listen to the signal and listen to them more if you can. Medium and YouTube generally kind of forget. I would go to LinkedIn. I think that's where most of the intel is and where you can find the better intel, like the Delta CX channel. But if you just go out there on the wild and Google stuff and search stuff on YouTube or Medium, odds on you're going to find up bad rather than good. Debbie.
Yeah, and before I answer this, I forgot to give a plug midway through the show. So quick plug, and then I'll answer this. Hey, everybody, please don't forget to sign up for our Patreon, patreon.com/CXCC. You can join for as little as $1 American a month, and there are also free memberships as well. It's kind of like being on my mailing list. So thank you, Nick. Check that. You didn't get the explode. There you go. Okay. Thank you, Nick. Also, subscribe to our new YouTube channel where we are right now. It's also called CXCC, Customer Experience, Customer Centricity. And keep an eye on our mostly free events calendar, cxcc.to/events. We are doing free webinars every week and lots of other cool stuff that we're doing off YouTube. We do it in Google Meet. It gets recorded. It goes to Patreon. Paid members first at all levels. 2 weeks later, it goes on YouTube for everybody else. So check those things out, please. Now, let's talk about how on our channels here we have addressed this issue of, right under me, how can you tell when someone is giving you good or not good information? First of all, you can see from the person who asked the question, they already know the answer because they said, I'm seeing people with claiming to have all these years of experience and their advice is laughable. That means you already know it's low quality and you already know this. Whether it was your gut feeling or you have enough experience to know, you knew that this was garbage. But over on this channel, we have a way that we remind people to measure these things, and that is, let me take the question off the page, our favorite from the critical thinking shows over on the Delta CX channel. Come on back. Meaningful, actionable, helpful. And the idea between this little triangle of 3 words is read something that somebody tweets, posts, articles, videos, whatever it is. Is it meaningful? Does it make sense to you? Does it have educational or informational value? Number 2, or really number 3, helpful. Did the information help you in some way? Does it drive your work forward? Does it help your career? Or is it fluffy and mysterious like, you suck and you're never going to be good at UX? Or anybody who doesn't use Figma is a dinosaur loser. So you can figure out if things are meaningful and helpful. And then as for actionable, to me, that's really at the center. If people write stuff and you don't know what to go and do after reading it, it's probably not actionable. There's a lot of inactionable articles, videos, advice, and it ranges from UX is dying to everybody use AI for no particular reason. Tom wants to know if you're wearing a Cal shirt. There you go, Cal.
Go Bears!
So you should say that, and then your screen should show a bear. So I want to remind people that, to me, a quality article, video, YouTube stream, book, whatever it is, when you are moving through that content, you're going, oh, this is something I can try, And I know what to do or how to do it because it was meaningful and helpful. It's actionable because I can take action, and it's meaningful and helpful, which means I understand it and I know what to do and how to do it. These are the things that I recommend. If you are looking at someone's stuff and it's just full of platitudes or complaints or vague booking or ultimata, like anybody who's not doing this is this, or if you're not doing it this way, you're this, or whatever. These are not meaningful, actionable, and helpful. These end up somewhere on my pyramid of shitty arguments. This is a lot of sarcasm and logical fallacies and ad hominem, which is just making fun of people, picking on them and insulting them. It's manipulation. It could be any of these things, or some sort of weird gaslighting. Like, I'm not going to be gaslit into using AI more. AI is not the right tool for me and my work at this time. I'm using AI extremely, extremely minimally. And so you're not going to gaslight me into it. Go ahead, call me a dinosaur. Tell me I'm old and crumbly and I need chair yoga and whatever. So, this is not meaningful, actionable, or helpful. It's just gaslighty shit. All right.
That's also, by the way, that's also how you can tell when there's a shitty conference speaker that you've been at a really dodgy conference, because you've heard 45 minutes, half an hour, and there's nothing, there's no takeaway, there's nothing you can do with it, there's nothing actionable, right? If you can't go away and practice or do this thing in the next day at your job, then what was the point in listening to it, in my humble opinion?
Absolutely. Everybody knows my least favorite conference speaker. If you really take a look at what this person says in the course of their webinar or talk or whatever, it's usually hire me. That can't be the takeaway.
Or it's peacocking. It's look how freaking amazing me and my team are. And it's like, well, that's great, and that's great PR and optics for you, but that doesn't help me in my career or my practice.
Yeah, I once saw a talk from a famous company where they were so proud of their accessibility efforts and how they had built something for blind people, and their entire story was how they worked with one blind person. And I was like, okay, this is having the opposite effect on me. I think you are, I don't even know what, like, what's the right word for, like, this is fake accessibility because you just took the perspective of one person with one set of circumstances, and you didn't look more at the rainbow of visual issues or disabilities or accessibility needs or assistive devices. You looked at one guy and, okay, that's better than zero, but it's still not quite right. And it was so much peacocking about, look how great and accessible and DEI we are because we worked with this blind guy.
Yeah, no, and that's fair, but I can actually, on this one, I can see the other side, because I have worked with single blind people, because that's all you can get from the recruitment. It's really, really, really hard to get a screen reader user, basically.
This was one of the biggest companies on the planet, so you would think, especially if they were going to show this one off at a conference, they could get more than one.
Yeah, no, if nothing else, throw the money at
an internal employee. It was an internal employee.
Right, yeah, less impressive, but still. Also, for some people, it's a transformation or a change point because they've never done anything accessible before, and they've suddenly done something accessible, and it's like, look, we're amazing. It's like, wow, Mazel tov, you spoke to one person. That doesn't represent the whole world. Crack on and keep doing the good work. You know what I mean? But that's just opening the book rather than finishing it. Yeah.
We got 10 minutes and a few more questions, so let's jump in. We have a new friend from Nigeria who says, I'm a junior UX designer actively seeking my first role, and I'm confused by so much of LinkedIn's advice. What area of UX should a junior focus on the most to land their first role? Some say UI and visual design. Others say different things. How do I measure my learning against what's needed on the job? Thank you. Oh, I've got a good answer for this one, but Nick, I want to hear yours first if you have one.
Yeah, I do, but I'll be quick because I'm sure Debbie's got a much better answer, because this is a similar question to what we had earlier, and I can understand the struggle you guys are having. The problem is this: there's the answer, and then there's the answer that you need to hear rather than kind of what actually. I can tell you where I would start, but we're not living in the world that I would want to live in, right? We're living in a much more real world of visual design and Figma. And it's like, if you're trying to get into UX and you don't have Figma, no one's going to look at you. That's kind of the facts, right? And I don't like that. That's not the way it should be, but that's the way it is. So there's something to that. I just wouldn't let that become your career training is Figma, because then you're just becoming another false UX designer who wields Figma and doesn't do anything different, basically. I would get your chops up as well. Learn interaction design you want to do UX. Yeah, absolutely. For what it's worth.
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, go on. I'll be real quick. Sorry. For what it's worth, I think you kind of want to maybe, I don't know what it's like in Nigeria. I don't know what the UX world is like, whether a UX design role encompasses research. But that would be, again, one of those distinguishing points, is get your research skills up so that you're designing to user needs that you're researching. Again, if UX in Nigeria supports that, then do it, man, because it'll make you a much better practitioner. But if you want to earn money, get on the ladder, get mentored, and you rock up as an Axior person in a Figma world, you're never going to get any traction. So I'm just being pragmatic, unfortunately. Debbie.
And my short pragmatic answer, because we have 2 more questions and only 9 more minutes. Nick, do you have to go at the top of the hour?
No, I'm cool. We can keep going.
Okay, we can run a little bit late, so we'll make sure we answer these 2 questions and then go. So, and this is the 3rd question, 2 more after this. So really, the advice that I tend to give people is take a look at some of the more junior jobs, whether you find them on LinkedIn or Indeed or a job board for your country, and take a look at what people expect you to be able to do. That's your answer. Nick and I can dream that it's information architecture and Axure and all of these other things. We can wish that it's all kinds of things. But the answer to your question is in the job descriptions themselves. Go look at job descriptions of jobs you would like to have and figure out which skills and tools they expect you to have, and then work on advancing yourself in those areas. If they say Figma, you got to be great at Figma. If they say Principle, go learn Principle. If they say Optimal Workshop, take a look at Optimal Workshop. If they say we want you to be able to do a card sort, learn what a card sort is. I can tell you what I think a junior should be able to do, but as Nick pointed out, we're in some other world now. So it doesn't matter what I think a junior should be able to do. You just have to take a look at the jobs that are out there, even if they're past and filled and closed now. Just take a look. Start making a spreadsheet or a Miro board or whatever or your own notes about what skills are jobs looking for, but also while you're at it, look at what experience they expect you to have, because right now for where UX is, even a junior job doesn't want to let in a newbie. Very few junior jobs, which should be for newbies, are for newbies. So you could learn every skill on their list, but if they expect 2 years of corporate experience and you don't have it, it might not matter that you learned some Figma and some Principle and some Axure and some card sorting and some whatever. They're looking for the person, in many cases, who's already done the work and made their mistakes at somebody else's company because they don't want to train you. Mike says, looking at job descriptions is exactly what I've been doing for months. I keep a log of it and I keep a copy. So yeah, that's my recommendation. I'm going to move on to the next question, which is a bit of a long story, but we'll do what we can. Ooh, long story. Here we go.
I love this. This is going to be the greatest question in the history of questions. Go for it.
Maybe. We're not judging. Okay, this says, I work with a senior PM, who I assume might be product manager, who, to put it bluntly, is horrible at prioritization and planning. Every week we have a meeting where they tell me 5 to 10 new things that they want me to start designing. Ideas from stakeholders, feedback from support channels, random solution ideas about big problems we've known have existed for a while. I try to push back, asking about deadlines. Suddenly, these don't have to be done for months. Saying we need to do research because some are just somebody's idea that we have other business priorities. Last week, we agreed to do discovery research to understand what the biggest problems are in users' eyes. And today, that got deprioritized for another idea as well. How would you go about prioritizing work when working with a PM who shifts focus so randomly? Oh, yeah.
Yes,
I got this
that's
one.
a great question. That's
Yes.
such a good question, because we see this behavior in PMs. It's a PM thing. It's not ubiquitous, but it's definitely a strong tendency for PMs to do this knee-jerk, jump around, U-turn, no strategy style for
I was just
sure.
going to
And I'm
say,
so
this is a sign of no strategy.
yeah, and we see this a lot. It's when you don't know what you're doing, unfortunately. The bigger, better deal, the bigger, better idea is, ooh, shiny, let's jump to that. And then you jump to that and you jump to that and you end up with nothing. Really, first of all, I just want to go like I applaud you for like identifying that kind of behavior. It's definitely a thing. Is it ubiquitous? No. Is it commonplace? Yeah, pretty much. How do you solve this? You need insight to kind of start nailing this down, but insight isn't going to stop them with the knee-jerk jump around style. It's messy. Okay, first of all, one of the things that Dr. Ari Zelmano preaches very strongly, and I wholly support him on his influential researcher course, is he says that we as user researchers must be a trusted advisor, a consigliere. I probably pronounced that badly. I apologize to Italian people.
No,
in
much
the room.
better than he does. Thank you.
I didn't put the G in, don't worry. But the point is, and that's the approach, and he's spot on and totally right, and call it whatever you want. We are not order takers. If you want to be an order taker, go work at Domino's or something like that, right? If you are an order taker, you're going to get your backside dragged around from pillar to post by a PM who's frankly being influenced by every other perspective, channel, stakeholder, another thing, frankly, right? The only way, so it's this yin yang or this kind of spiral to the bottom of bad direction and chasing after it, right? And that's no fun for anyone. It's not efficient. The best thing to do is get the insight in, start to understand around the user needs and the pains of the people in this context. That's everything comes back down to that. Tom Wilson and I disagree on this, but we're going to have lots of chats separately about all of this. Hi, Thomas. And I won't go into it now, but I have some pretty radical views, it appears, on discovery and how we do discovery in the latter world. And I do discovery in a completely different way. I was explaining it to my team earlier today at my full-time job. The problem is discovery, and how do you introduce a new product to the market with any kind of confidence, and that's why the PM is freaking out. That's the bottom line. It needs a better discovery or better insight generation process. That's kind of the answer there. Debbie and I can do something completely separate on discovery. Maybe I'll do it with Thomas, where we do a kind of a face-to-face chat and really dissect this kind of a topic. It's a big one, and I'd love to get into it. And Thomas and I have had great chats in the past. We'll find time in diaries and we'll get onto that. I don't know. That's just where my head is at. Sorry, Deb. I know we're running out of time.
No, it's fine. We have one more question after this, and we can both stay late, so that's fine. A couple of things here. Last week's free webinar was on my perspectives on continuous discovery and continuous discovery research. So people can check the Patreon. I don't think it's live for everybody yet, because again, our webinars are for paid Patreon members only for 2 weeks, and then they're on YouTube for everybody. So if you subscribe on YouTube, you'll get notified in about a week that our continuous discovery webinar is now available to you, or if you join the paid Patreon, you'll have it right now. So here's the notes that I made about this topic while Nick was talking. The first thing that I wrote down is, first of all, I agree with Nick. So I've got nothing, I'm not going to say anything opposing what he said. I'm going to add to it. First of all, we can tell here that there is no strategy and that the PM is an order taker. So you are inheriting the problem of the PM being in an order taker position. The PM is not being strategic. I've been saying in my book, everybody repeat it after me, customers know you suck. I've been saying it in my book, in articles, in other webinars, that PMs have to be more strategic gatekeepers if they are getting stuff from leaders and executives who say, hey, I want you to now focus on this and now focus on that. And oh my God, I just heard that customer support is getting these complaints. Fix that and blah, blah, blah. Your PM is supposed to be that strategic gatekeeper to say, hold on. Yes, all of these are true, but we have to figure out when we're going to address each of these based on what our priorities are. What do we work on first? What do we work on second? So I always remind someone like that I can only work on one thing at a time. And that if they're going to keep adding priorities to my thing, then we have to pause and reprioritize. If I'm working on what was priority 1 2 weeks ago, and now you have a new priority 1, I want to make sure that I have an email or a Slack chat from you that says that old priority 1 is not a priority anymore. Put that in writing. And I want to make sure that we understand these priorities and that you understand that I can only work on one thing at a time and do it well. You can't put me on 3 things, 5 things, 10 things and expect me to do them well and or quickly. Hold on, Nick. I just want to get through some of my notes. So sorry, I would want to ask that person to give me a written email, Slack, Teams, whatever you do. What are my priorities? Tell me what my priority is right now. And if they try to gaslight you, you have to talk to them, because if they say, well, you're just bad at time management, you should be able to do all of these things, I would say, thank you, that's gaslighting. The problem is not my time management. Everybody can always be better at time management, but let's not pretend that my problem is time management. My problem is every time I talk to you, you have 5 to 10 new things that you want me to work on that you've decided are on fire. That's not my time management. It's your priority management. You're the person giving me the priorities. If your priorities aren't clear, or what you're getting down from other people isn't clear, you need to clarify that with yourself and with your leaders before you tell me to stop working on whatever was on fire last week and work on this. And I also wrote down, talk to your manager, because this is a process problem. This is a problem with the process of how work is done. Evidently, there's no strategy. We go by whims and new ideas. And there's a great story in my book in, chapter 21 or so, when I interview Steve Johnson about product management. And he said he spoke to a company where every time a VP told the engineers, oh my God, this is a new priority, everybody work on this, the engineers didn't touch it for a month, just to see if it was still a priority a month later. And almost never did the VP come back and say, where's that thing we talked about a month ago? The VP always had something else that was on fire next and said, now work on this. And so basically the engineers stopped working on the things that the VP would come up with every week or whatever it was. And finally, Steve, who's interviewed in the book, who's been on our webinars, he's coming back in November, he said he just went into the executive and leadership meeting and he said, okay, I found the problem with the engineers. The problem is you. If you're going to give engineers a priority or something to work on, let them do it before you throw something else at them. And so, I was on the influential researcher course. Good point to look at again. Wanted to bring the product manager with me on the journey. Yeah, it's hard. It's hard because the product manager is on their own journey. They're running in a hamster wheel and they're just probably taking orders from above them, and they don't have the ability to strategically prioritize. Where if someone says, here's a customer complaint, here's something an executive wants, here's an idea somebody had, here's a whatever, that person should be able to prioritize that or talk to their cross-functional team and say, let's do a prioritization exercise where we figure out how important any of these things are. And then that person has to be a strategic product manager and go back to the executives and leaders and whoever and say, okay, we got your message. We've worked this into our priorities and our backlog. Here's our timeline or roadmap. We're going to get to this month. We're going to get to this next month. We're going to get to this in this quarter. These are our priorities. And that person has to stand up for that and protect the team, not pass this crap on to the team. So that would be my answer there. Nick, we have one more question. Can you stay a little longer?
Yeah, I'll be really quick though. I just got to tag this on because what you've just described is a project manager. And that's what we lost. That whole idea, this working on one thing at one time, the distribution of work, the monitoring of all of that stuff is historically the domain, the preserve of the delivery lead, of the project manager. But we lost them and replaced them with product managers, and product managers don't know anything about delivery, or some are great at it, but generally speaking, it's not their bag.
Right.
We've lost delivery in all of this. That's kind of what's going on, and people don't know prioritization because, anyway. Do I have any advice on getting engineers on board with UX? Not software engineers, actual engineering engineers.
Yeah, I think the person who asked this question is working with physical devices. So this is less about the software engineer and more about the engineers of physical devices. So any advice on getting those engineers?
Yeah, I have limited experience working with engineering engineers, if you know what I mean, like, bridge builders and those sorts of people. When I have worked with them, the reason why they don't care about UX, and I say that in loving, supportive terms, right? The reason why it's not massively important to them is because the engineering problems that they typically solve are much more root cause kind of stuff. And we in user land are often quite far away from that engineering problem in real time. So they're not that concerned because it's not an engineering problem. Do you see what I'm saying? It's more foundational. It's more central. That's not always the case. And sometimes, engineering and UX, especially in software engineering terms, are much more hand in hand. But when we're talking traditional physical engineering, the CX, whatever you want to call that, I built a bridge. How do people walk over it is less of a concern because it's meeting all of the design goal or the engineering goals and engineering aims. It can tolerate 50 million tons. It can sustain 3 kiloton earthquake and all the, whatever the stuff that goes on. That's my very uninformed answer to that one. Sorry.
Yeah, what I would add to that would be, looks like we have an entire school class joining us. Hi, everybody. We're just wrapping up. You're a little late. We usually start this an hour earlier. We're just running a little late because we had so many questions. So my advice to this is that when I think about engineering engineers of physical devices, I wonder, where's your human factors engineer? If you have industrial designers, if you have physical product device engineers, I would think that among them should be a human factors engineer, someone who is looking at ergonomics, usability, human device interaction, and in a sense that is your UX and CX. Now, of course, if there's also a screen on this and there's going to be digital interactions with a screen or settings or something, then of course that's even further UX. But obviously the device itself, if a human interacts with it, needs a human factors engineer. I think if you don't have a human factors engineer on the team, then if you don't have great engineering engineers, and if you have people who just read a requirements document and build the thing that matches the requirements document, whether or not it's good for the human understanding or the human usage, you're going to run into some problems. So I would want to make sure that if you are building that engineering team or rebuilding it or adding to it, or if somebody's open to it, get a human factors engineer. That is a type of engineer that you probably already know about. Get that person on the team because they could hopefully help the other people understand why certain things are built or laid out or designed or constructed because of the human interaction. So I would say it's less your UX designer's job to explain this to these engineers, but I would bring in the human factors engineer to have that engineer to engineer simpatico, nice conversation and hopefully influence. Nick, anything to add?
No, that's a great answer. Mind meld. That's a mind meld thing for the engineers to do. But yeah,
Very
human
good.
factors. But the only thing I would say is those human factors guys, they can be very anthropomorphic, very physical, but there's often loads that are all cognitive ergonomists too. So I don't want to be too broad brush. Great idea. Good suggestion.
Yeah, somebody, right, exactly. Ergonomist, human factors engineer, get somebody in there who speaks engineering, but is also speaking human device interaction and can help build those bridges for the other engineers on the team and hopefully influence them. I wouldn't ask a UX designer to fix this one. So we are unfortunately way out of time. Thank you so much to Dr. Nick for staying late with us and as always giving us great answers and advice to the questions that you provide. You can also send in questions ahead of time if you'd like through deltacx.com/links. And as always, yes, please join the Patreon, patreon.com/cxcc. Subscribe here on YouTube to both the CX-CC channel and our old Delta CX channel where there are about 800 videos. So you've got a whole library of stuff where you can learn. And of course, cxcc.to/events for more of our upcoming webinars, and which are mostly free. They take place in Google Meet. So if you're waiting for them to start as a live stream, they are not. Tomorrow, I will be redoing the webinar on my impact map and why I don't agree with traditional versions of impact maps or Teresa Torres's opportunity map. I'm going to be talking about the Delta CX version of an impact map and why I believe it will help you tell better stories and get some buy-in. Nick, anything you want to say before we say goodbye?
No, good stuff. But to all those lovely Indian people that have just joined in the past 10 minutes, next month when we do this again, because we do this every month, come an hour earlier and you can get all the good stuff.
Yeah, watch for it. It's usually 3 p.m. Italy time, so translate that to your time zone. Just remember, we'll be changing our clocks in a few weeks, so check. But I am here. Thank you, Montserrat. I always appreciate you pressing like on my LinkedIn stuff. I see you there. So I just want to remind everybody that we are going to be making some changes to our schedule for 2024, but for now, stuff is at 3 p.m. Italy time. We're changing clocks soon. Keep an eye on that calendar. So I'm going to play us out of here. Nick, as always, thank you, and I'll catch everybody soon. Bye.